What's happening, guys? MS5 problem solving and decision making walkthrough video. So this lesson follows on from MS4 critical thinking. And in critical thinking, we really expose to the recruits some of the biases and blind spots that they might suffer in their thinking. In MS5 here, we're looking at the solutions to that. So some of the tools and strategies that they can employ to overcome those biases and blind spots. So we're going to introduce two tools to them. One is SWOT analysis. The other is De Bono's 5 thinking hats. And we're going to ask them to use these tools in the scenarios that we put to them. So in CMS 18, this lesson was a Plan X. And as we all know, Plan X is a much more mathematical in focus. Here we are shifting focus towards values and standards. So the serials that they'll face in the scenarios, and these scenarios are fictitious, though they're based on real historical events. We are testing their values and standards, and we're asking them to critically discuss how to trade off their values and standards in the given circumstances. So you want to achieve two things with this. One, you want them to be using the tools, the problem-solving, decision-making tools that we introduced to them. And two, you want them to critically discuss values and standards and how to employ them in the given circumstances. This lesson does heavily link to LOAC, OP-law, but whereas LOAC is heavily scripted and the instructor reads out the notes almost verbatim, here you are facilitating a discussion where mistakes are okay and the instructor can really add their flair. So this lesson is much more fluid, much more dynamic, much more discussion-based, and the recruits are taking the floor and giving their insights and their contributions. So we start with a nice warm-up. The brain is a muscle as any other. So we'll play a game here of dingbats. It's like a catchphrase, say what you see, look at the prompt on the screen. What is it trying to denote? What is the expression that lies beneath it? Number one, for example, I'm in the middle of something. Two, once upon a time. Hopefully that's clear to you. Give them a few minutes to think about it individually, and then maybe a minute or two at the end to confer with their partner or the person next to them. It's not a test. You're not trying to catch them out. It's just warming them up. Answers are on the next page. Then you want them to be thinking about the types of problems that exist. But before that, they need to jot down some big decisions that they've made. So just give them a minute or two individually to think about some big decisions they've made. It might be, leaving home, joining the army, buying a car, leaving the army, I don't know, whatever it is. Now we're going to introduce the different types of problems. These should be familiar to you. Simple, complex, wicked. We go up in layers of complexity the further we go along. And then I've put the definition and an example of that problem below. This example here under wicked problem is from the film Speed with Keanu Reeves. Okay, and then we want them to think about those decisions that they just jotted down. Well, those decisions that they jotted down tackled a problem that they faced. So let's put those problems into categories. You can get them to do this on their notepads, or there's an option here to share your screen. So you start the room, start ProConnect, the number appears, you want to share screen, send screenshot, that goes to their device, then they can start typing in here, annotating, adding examples in under each category. For you to then get up on the board and use for a discussion. That's optional. This bit also uses ProConnect, word cloud. So you want to click Start Over, and that starts the word cloud. But this is a review of MS4, some of the factors that impact our ability to make decisions. So we're looking at internal, external factors here. Internal, namely, heuristics, biases, attitude, personality. External being culture, society, education, things like that. But it's just a review of MS4 because it's relevant. And then we go into the tools that we want them to apply for the case studies later on. The first one should be familiar to you, SWOT analysis. I should just point out one of the things that people often get confused with SWOT analysis is the difference between strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. Strengths and weaknesses refers to internal factors. So a strength, for example, is I'm reasonably qualified or reasonably tech savvy. And then opportunities and threats focuses on external factors. So threats being tech sometimes fails you no matter how qualified you are. So just a little note on that. And then the other tool that we want to use is De Bono's 5 thinking hats. So this is a tool that's often used in corporate meetings to think about every facet of a problem. So each individual would wear a different kind of hat, and doing so would adopt a different mode of thinking and would have to adopt a different line of questioning according to whatever hat they're wearing. So feelings, for example, that person is designated to think about the feelings. How is it going to make people feel? What are the hunches, the instincts behind the problem and the decision? So it's a little like red teaming, only it adds extra layers of thought and critical analysis. So once we've introduced the tools, we want them to use them and use them specifically to the problem that they've produced already. Earlier, when they jotted down a decision and they categorized a problem, you get them to pick one of them and then apply either SWOT or de Bono's thinking hats and use what you see in front of you, use this structure here to organize their thoughts. So we're not expecting a great deal of detail at this point. We're just introducing the tools to them. But if you give them a free-for-all, you might find that most of them just use SWOT analysis. So from an instructor point of view, it might be a good idea to designate 1 and 2 sections, for example, to do SWOT analysis, and 3 and 4 sections to do de Bono's hats, just so we get an even spread of application of these tools rather than everyone just doing the same. So we're just giving them a chance to practice using these tools, and then we're going to give them a break. And it's particularly important in this lesson that we do give them a break because they need to reset ahead of going into the next activity, because the next activity is quite immersive. It's based on what's called the case study method. It's an approach to teaching and instructing that tries to make it as realistic and immersive as possible within the confines of a classroom. So the point here is to put the recruits in the shoes of the participants in this case study in particular, and to really think about how they might react in the given circumstances. So we need to really get them into the scenario itself. Lots of music and lots of sounds and visuals here. So we're going to do this by showing them a video. This video here, if you click on the screen, it should take you to YouTube. Now, I've had copyright issues with this video, so I've had to upload it onto a specific account. So I've made an Edwing account and made a login for it. I'll put that detail on the presenter slide. But the clip here is from a film called Lebanon, and it follows the story of Israeli conscripts as they go through their operations in Lebanon. And the only view that they have outside of this tank is through the turret. And it really sets the scene, because the guy behind the turret, the guy with the trigger in his hand, he faces 2 quite impossible scenarios. One involving a vehicle approaching and meandering around the road quite erratically, but him failing to fire any rounds, tank rounds, at the vehicle. In the end, people get out of the vehicle, they pop off a few rounds, and his friends and comrades on the side of the tank end up getting hit. One of them goes down and is quite badly injured and ends up dying. And his muckers look at him with scorn because he hasn't pulled the trigger when he could have. A few moments later, a second vehicle approaches, and this guy is a bit different. He holds his hand up. He looks to be quite benign, but this time the guy behind the trigger is a little trigger happy because of what just happened. Fires the round off straight away, ends up destroying the truck, and the civilian inside is badly maimed, and they have to deal with the situation, again, to the opprobrium of his patrol commander. So what this situation, or what this scenario does, it really highlights the impossibility of making good decisions when deployed, and it really highlights the consequences of making all of these decisions. So that will set the scene for this activity. Once you go on, it's based on the same sort of scenario, but we're using stories from different historical contexts. This scenario here is based on a scenario from World War One, but I've applied it to a modern day context. You can click on the eye on the screen to find information about the scenario itself, and then after you've introduced that to them, show them the screen. There's even an option to share screen here as well as before for them to get it onto their devices, so they can start thinking about how to tackle the problem. So you give them several minutes in their groups to thrash through, to really talk about the issue, to think about what they would do, and then they can back brief to you afterwards. And you can say, okay, what did you do at 2 section? 3 section, did you agree? Okay, and why not? And really throw the ball around the room, get the ideas flowing. And again, values and standards is the golden thread here. The second phase of the scenario is based on Marine A, same detail. Read that up to them, give them the option to screen share or to use this as a handrail. And then the third scenario is not based on combat operations, but on STTs, because I think it's important to introduce situations which they're more likely to face. This one in particular is based on an experience that I have faced when deployed on STT, but I think it's quite a useful one to use in this case. Information about the real life examples are on this screen. If you click on the eye, you can see the first, second, and third case examples displayed here. At the end of it, you can definitely tie this to LOAC, and you can definitely give your 2 cents. It's important that you get them to agree and disagree with each other and really figure it out together, and then you can give them perhaps a DS answer, or perhaps what you might do at the end of that discussion. Once they've done that, make sure you run this quiz. This really scoops up MS4 and 5, so do make time for this. It's important to really show evidence of learning and to highlight any problems or any gaps in their knowledge.